Greetings and welcome to another edition of Todd Talk, where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. In keeping with our theme of social emotional learning, today I'll be talking about how you can form advisory groups so that you can purposely and with intent be teaching social and emotional skills for coping mechanisms for students to help them with any issues that they may have. So the way that advisory groups can form, they can be as informal as just simply having a morning meeting. So sometimes these are called Monday meetings. And so what these would look like is every Monday morning or whatever day you choose, you take 10 to 15 minutes and you sit down with students, and it can be very informal, it can be sitting on the ground or whatever, and you talk about things that are coming up for them. It doesn't have to be academic in nature, can be personal, can be a friendship that's in trouble or something of that nature. But it's one of those things where you're creating a space for them to be able to share. And you also have to set the environment so that they feel confident in doing that. So you might want to create norms for your group and make sure that students know that whatever is said in morning meeting stays in morning meeting and is not talked about with anyone else. And so you use those morning meetings to kind of just get a temperature, a feel of where your students are. And you can have guiding questions in there that can help you, or you can just leave it open depending upon the comfort level of your students. But in morning meetings, I tend to like to ask open-ended questions, such as some of the ones that you see listed here, of things that just kind of get the conversation started. And then once the conversation started, you can kind of take it wherever it goes and bring it up. When students bring up things that are bothering them or things that are, affecting their social and emotional aspects, then you can go into further detail with that. So that's the example of a morning meeting. That's kind of an informal way to do it. It's really quick. You can do it in your own classroom. If you want something that's a little more formal, you can form advisory groups. So if you're how we did it in our gifted program was that we had a teaching team of 8 different teachers. And what we did was, and we also had 3 grade levels that we were covering. So we had 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And so what we did is every other week we would meet for 45 minutes in advisory. And how we form these advisory groups is that we made them smaller than your typical class size. So a class size is anywhere from 25 to 30 students. I jumped into this, so we had 9 teachers to divide students amongst. And I got the principal to also be involved. And so you had groups of anywhere from 15 to 20, and that way there were more intimate groups. You could really get to know your students. And we mixed the grades of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade for most of the advisories. Occasionally we would have a grade level advisory group, so only 6th graders would be 6th graders and so on and so forth. But we wanted kids to mix with one another and get to know each other as part of our, our gifted community, because we were a magnet program. And so what this looked like is, every couple weeks, we had an advisory group of 45 minutes long. In these advisory groups, we covered topics that were really pertinent to our students. And so you can see a list here of some examples of some of the topics that we feel that come up, especially with gifted students, but can come up with any students as well. And so this would act as the theme for that particular unit. So, for example, if we were looking at the idea of, asking questions, we would start usually with an activity of some sort that kind of got us into the spirit of what it is we were going to be talking about. And then we would reflect upon that activity, and then that would lead us into a discussion. And so there was always a discussion where students were getting to share. And there were some students that were better than others, and some students that took longer than others to start to feel, confident enough to share what it is that they wanted to share. But, you do have to create that environment and space where they feel like they're safe to do that. If a student doesn't want to talk, you shouldn't have to force them to talk. So you as the teacher have to decide how you're going to set that learning and that suitable learning environment for talking about things that they are looking at. So I have included here the curriculum that we used. It was a 10-week program for us. And as you can see here, it started with norms. And so we establishing norms is really important as part of a group. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page of what the expectations were. And then we just went through week by week with the different topics that we were discussing. I always try to make it real hands-on. It wasn't just sitting around talking the whole time. There was usually an activity at the beginning to try to get the juices flowing or sparks going or people thinking. And I tried to make that kind of activities where kids are getting out of their seat and being involved, hands-on, and getting to actually not just sit and be talked at, but they are actually part of the process of learning about their advisory needs. So to show you, this is an example of a lesson that we would do on time management. So the way I started the lesson was I would divide the group into teams of 5. And then they would have to appoint a scorer that would score another team. And then I would give them 5 minutes to perform these 20 tasks. And then the scorekeeper would keep track of points and announce, who had gotten the most points. So, it would be silly things like one member of the group had to go around the room one time to get 5 points. Everyone had to be assigned a nickname to each member of the team. There were other that were more difficult, such as creating a list of the top 5 books you would recommend. And what this did was, there's no way you're going to get all of these activities done in 5 minutes, which is kind of the purpose of it. The purpose is, are there ways that you could prioritize or manage your time to get higher score than what you got? So we would finish after we did the actual activity, then we would have a reflection. And that reflection then would, or debriefing. And so we would talk about how it went, what could have gone better, things that could have been done to improve. So this kind of then gets them thinking about the idea of their own time management. And so then I ask a general question of what are some things that can waste time? And I put some possibilities here. Kids may have ones that are not there, or they may phrase them in different ways, but it gives you a general idea of what are some possible answers that student might come up with. And then you ask the question of them, what are ways that they can, counter these time wasters, or what can they do to manage their time better? And so they're the ones developing the strategies. You're not showing them the strategies. These are here as a guide for you. If the kids start to kind of form that idea but can't quite get it out, you could help them with that. But for the most part, kids are going to be generating these ideas. And so by the time that this activity debriefing ends, students have a pretty good idea of what are time wasters in their own lives, and then what are things that they could do to make that better. Then we always conclude with takeaways. So we look at what are the lessons that we want to get from this. And so ideas such as using a calendar, having kids look at the big picture, doing what we did, which was identifying time wasters and managing their time. And so we would conclude with a discussion question of why would managing your time be so important? And how do you manage your time specifically? And then students can talk about some personal issues that they have had with time management or working with others, or whether they feel time management is important or not. What is the value that they've placed on that? And then there's some additional activities. I always over plan for my advisors, because you never know where the discussion is going to take you. So the discussion could take 5 minutes. It could take 30 minutes. You want to give space for that to happen. And so I always had extra things just in case the discussion wasn't going anywhere. So in this case, if they finished early, then you could go to the blank pizza chart and have them chart out what it looked like to actually organize their day and how they manage that time and how they divide up, and then they can visually see how it looks like a pizza. But we didn't get to that in that particular lesson, but it's there in case you want to get to it or give them a graphic organizer. So what you see there is an example of one lesson of the 10 that we did. I had a link to all 10 lessons, so if you want to use those to form your own advisor groups, please feel free to do so. And it is important that you are purposeful about the social emotional learning that you provide for students. An advisor group is a really good way to show them that you are considering their social and emotional needs, and that you're trying to make concerted efforts to create strategies for helping with those.